Welcome back to the Sports Marketeer podcast. I wanted to kick things off to say a big thank you to those of you who voted for this podcast in the recent Sports Podcast Awards. We took the bronze, so we're on the podium in the sports business category, and we finished above some pretty established and respected podcasts in the sector. So I'm just really thrilled about that. So I wanted to say a big thank you. Now, on to today's episode. If you're an NFL fan or you are curious about all things content, culture, and marketing around the phenomenon that is the Super Bowl, then this one's for you. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome to the Sports Marketeer. I'm your host, Amar Singh, and today we're going to look back at the Super Bowl. Incredible event, incredible spectacle, one of the most interesting cultural moments on the calendar every year. So I'm really excited to get into this today. And I've got two amazing guests. Firstly, I've got James Hamlin, who's a UK director at the digital marketing agency Ad3. He's a veteran NFL fan. He's followed 39 Super Bowls, I believe.
One short of 40. Yeah,
What?
Chicago Bears, New England Patriots, 86 was 40th, so 39 Super Bowls in. Yeah.
Amazing, brilliant. And then I've also got another NFL veteran, but in a slightly different way, Martin del Palacio. He's a TV presenter, a journalist, a guy I've worked with many times in the past as well, and head of content for the official Spanish channel of the NFL. How are you doing, Martin?
Oh, good. I'm good. Just came back from New Orleans, and it was an experience for sure.
We'll get into that in a minute. You know, you can brag as much as you like, mate, because we'd love to know more about the experience. So wonderful to have you guys on board. Let's start with you, James. You were not in New Orleans, but you were probably in the next best place, right? I think, to maybe being in Philadelphia itself, maybe. So maybe the third best place. What was your Super Bowl experience this year?
Yeah, so it took place in London, and I had the pleasure of being at two different Super Bowl parties because, I was at a Super Bowl party at the Ministry of Sound, which was really interesting. And also I then watched more of the game at the Super Bowl party at Box Park in Croydon. And so I was able to experience two of London's most iconic venues, full of different types of crowds, but very busy with Super Bowl fans enjoying it, staying up ridiculously late on a Sunday night, which I think people appreciate it as an excuse to do that, right? Some people, and some people just go straight to bed. So yeah, I was in the thick of it, and it's good to experience that in some iconic London venues alongside some other fans for sure.
Amazing. I always wondered who actually goes to Ministry of Sound in the year 2025. Now I know it's you, James.
It's actually the first time I've ever been there. My wife, actually, when I met my wife, she was working at Ministry of Sound randomly, and it's the first time I've ever been there. So it was a new experience for me. It took the Super Bowl to get me there. So there you go.
Brilliant. And Martin, you mentioned it earlier. What was your Super Bowl experience this year then?
Well, I was in the stadium. I was in Superdome. It was fun. The game, not so much. That was the downside of it. Like I've been in stadium the last 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. I wasn't in Tampa because of the COVID. Like we were restricted. And this was game-wise the worst one because all the others had been closed. This one, like essentially, we figured by the, let's say, halfway first quarter that it was going to be like the Eagles all the way. But well, the rest was great. The stadium is great. They rebuilt the Superdome, which is like a very iconic venue, and they did it pretty well. Like I was more impressed by this than the Allegiant Stadium, that was the Las Vegas stadium for last year. It was fun, and New Orleans is a fun city. In general, it was a great experience, even though the game was not what we expected.
Yeah.
Of all the cities you've been to, Martin, is New Orleans like the ultimate Super Bowl city? Because you don't have to drive, you can just get down there, everything's walkable. That's what I hear.
For me, the best one was Miami, by far. New Orleans was so right, but not like Miami. Miami like offers a lot more stuff to do. There's the beach just right next to where all the things were taking place. In New Orleans, you didn't have to drive, which was pretty good, but like I wasn't, but people were staying in pretty dodgy neighborhoods. They weren't very happy about it. We were a little farther out, but our neighborhood was very nice. The place that the NFL rented for us was great. We weren't staying in a hotel. The whole Mundo crew was staying in a house. and a colonial house, like 8 bedrooms, 10 bathrooms. It was like a grill area, pool. It was very nice, like really, really nice, like the best we've been. So I have no complaints about it. But yeah, in terms of the best city, I think Miami, like the Eagles, Miami wins by a landslide.
Yeah. Miami was epic. I was with you for that one, Martin. You'll remember, and it was
How can I forget that Black Eyed Peas party?
yeah,
Impossible.
yeah. We had an insane activation, Bud X Miami, where we took over a hotel for the weekend, and we had the Black Eyed Peas, we had Ja Rule, we had Dwayne Wade's karaoke party. It was unreal, and Martin and some of the Mundo crew were there. So you mentioned that you were with the guys from NFL Mundo, and you go to a lot of the NFL games with them. What it's about, what's the mission of, and its growth has been pretty insane over the last few years, right?
Well, it's actually the other way around. It's Mundo NFL, but well, it doesn't matter. So, well, the idea was to create an official outlet for Spanish-speaking content. We have a YouTube channel, which is pretty big now. We have shows there. I host one of them. Antoine Griezmann hosts another one, by the way. It's not extremely popular, but we're trying to push it. But yeah, that's another highlight. We have a lot of content here and there. We have all the highlights of all the games, which are by far our most viewed content. Then we have Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok accounts where we publish. We have, of course, the rights to all the highlights and all the image from the games. So that's a very good thing. And then, yeah, we create content in general. We see ourselves as the equivalent of the English NFL, like NFL media, let's say. No, of course, it's all web-based. We don't have an NFL Network channel, for example, but we work that way. And then we have localized accounts. Like we have NFL Mexico, which I don't run, but I also run NFL Spain, which has just been recently launched because we're going to have a game in Madrid. So yeah, that's more or less what I do.
That's incredible. I mean, it's great to see the rise of that and the content strategy really coming to life. You mentioned it wasn't the best game this year, but actually, James, you like a good blowout in the Super Bowl, don't you?
Like it's yeah, look, for me it felt very nostalgic, right? For somebody that grew up, started watching Super Bowls in the 80s, late 80s onwards, they generally all were blowouts. And as I guess back then you had the super teams, the Joe Montana 49ers and Chicago Bears and these kind of power franchises. But as British fans, it was brilliant because, often we couldn't remember the fourth quarter or be asleep because it was never really a nail biter. It was only really, and the NFL clearly wants it for this because it wants advertisers, it wants tension. It's only really the Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos game, which I think was 12 years ago. I think it's the first time I met you, Amar. We started doing Super Bowl media. We'd had that blowout. So again, for people that want to keep you engaged, maybe not so, but for British fans that generally struggle to make it past half time, I think that was fairly welcome. And as I said earlier, as someone that was moving from party to party, as not everyone does, I was able to not actually miss too much of the storyline toing and throwing. So it was, but not a KC fan either. So again, fairly neutral. So I was fine with it.
Yeah, looking at it from a UK perspective, you always end up seeing all kinds of myths and all kinds of misconceptions about what it is. I think people often compare it to the perception in the UK can be from people who aren't NFL fans is that, well, it's nowhere near as big as the World Cup final. It's nowhere near as important as what we see in football. And of course, football, as in soccer, has a huge following, of course, and nothing comes close to that. But the Super Bowl is completely unique, Martin, right? You can't really compare World Cup final with the Super Bowl, can you?
No, I don't think so, because the World Cup final is the culmination of a 1 month event. Let's say it this way, which takes place in one country, and all the eyes of the world are fixated on that event. This is more similar to the Champions League final, to be honest, the Super Bowl. That's a more relevant comparison. And the event itself, it's way bigger, I think, than the Champions League final, having been in both, because they do it for a week. Like it's a whole week of stuff happening around the city. They have this on Monday. They have this thing called opening night, where all the players are available for press conferences at the same time. So it's a huge event. It's in the venue of the game itself in general. So you go and visit the stadium before going. Then from Tuesday till Friday, you have this thing called Radio Row, where all the shows take place, and like former players or actual players from other teams pass by and are there for interviews. We interviewed Jaden Daniels, for example, which was very good.
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed Emmitt Smith as well. So yeah, you have all these things, and you have all these shows and all these like activations as well. Like we all eat the wings from the same brand that's always the same. Like they're giving away wings, and then the game itself is huge in the States. It's not as huge in different parts of the world, but in Mexico it's huge. It's starting to get bigger elsewhere as well, and also have the concert. We can argue about Kendrick Lamar's concert this time, but in general, the concert is a huge attraction for people who are not regularly involved into the NFL itself.
Yeah, it is a huge cultural occasion, a huge cultural spectacle. It's a unifying event on the calendar in the USA, in a place that's quite divided at the moment. And I also read that it was watched by a record 126 million viewers on Fox. And a lot of people are saying, look, more people watched it this year than, it's the most watched US television broadcast in history, more than the moon landing. So there's some really big headlines being put out there. You've got the spectacle of it being what it is on the ground, which is huge for brands, huge for marketing, huge for people activating. That week, as you say, Martin, is unlike anything else. And the game almost feels like an afterthought sometimes when you're on the ground activating in that week. But James, you are an NFL convert. You're a UK guy, so perhaps you can understand why people misunderstand what the Super Bowl is. But there's something distinctly American about it as well. What is it that makes it such a special cultural phenomenon?
Yeah, look, I think for folks in the UK, the closest parallel you could probably get would probably be how the FA Cup final was probably in the 80s, right? If remember where the FA Cup, the status it used to be, in the 80s going into the early 90s, this is all pre-Sky TV when football wasn't televised. The whole of the UK would be fixed on the FA Cup final, street parties, etc., etc. Liverpool were dominant, all that type of stuff. That's probably the closest we could give. Because I think the Champions League analogy is a really good one from Martin. But the challenge is if it's two teams from Spain, and that's happened occasionally, people watch it, but of course it doesn't have that fever that it takes over. I think over there, again, you're talking about one country that is focused on one particular point. NFL have done an incredible job of making it like this national holiday, and it's embraced party culture, right? So many other American sports will have the series formats. They will be on super late at night, especially on the East Coast. And there's the tribal side of it. It's the one kickoff, the one game that's on only at one particular time as well. And it's embraced the whole kind of party consumerism aspect of it massively, way before we kind of did. So it's all the things added up to it, and the recent resurgence of, I say resurgence, but wrong word, continual growth of the NFL, certainly versus the other sports league. Gambling, fantasy football, the internet, pop culture, Taylor Swift. It's like all the ticks, isn't it, that continue to align. I thought the rating number was interesting because on paper, think about it, not the world's most exciting matchup. We've seen this matchup before 3 years ago, and you do get fatigued with the Chiefs when you see them every year. This happens. Kendrick Lamar, I'm sure we'll talk about that. Someone that lots of people haven't heard of. So I was interested to see what the number was, because those things would push back against it. But again, it's ascendancy. And I know that they're starting to move now in terms of how they track it. Because I think this was the first Super Bowl that was actually you could see on a streaming platform. You didn't need a cable setup. And again, but also try to track the amount of people that were watching it on devices and on streaming. And, a lot of people watch it on illegal streaming. So I've heard, I don't know, because lots of people like to watch the American ad feed, right? That's now a thing. Right, lots of people like to do that. So, but hugely popular, and no signs of slowing down, I'd say.
Yeah. In terms of the viewing occasion, you've just come from the US, Martin, and the Super Bowl breaking new records in the US for TV viewing, right? Taking all the digital to one side. And then looking at Sportico's stats for the top 100 most watched US broadcasts of 2024, 72 of them are NFL matches, right? So, no other sporting occasion comes close. I think you need to look at at the NBA finals. Sorry, women's college basketball in at 76. Actually, 72 out of 100 NFL matches. Does that surprise you at all that it's so popular as a TV occasion now?
No, not really. It's been growing a lot lately. It's been taking the space of other American sports. Baseball is on the wane, hockey as well. The MLS hasn't managed to take those spaces as well.
Yeah.
So, and the NBA has also experienced a loss of interest. So it mostly became the American pastime. Before it was more divided. Before it was baseball originally, then it started to lose ground. It was divided between baseball, the NBA, and the NFL, and now it's essentially the NFL. I think in many ways because they've been better at marketing it, because also because of the nature of the sport, which is a start-stop sport where you can actually like scroll on your phone at the same time as you're watching it and you're not missing anything really. It's not like the NBA or football itself where you actually, well, you have a second screen, but you have the match going on at the same time. Baseball is too slow, and games like matches are like 3 or 4 hours and nothing's happening, and people get bored, like the new generation especially. So I think it's a sport tailored to the new audiences, to sponsors as well. It's a very like I'm not surprised by its growth because it's a sport that is made for these times, even if it was actually created 100 years ago.
And when you're at the Super Bowl, do you feel the sense that a few people I spoke to who were there, some colleagues as well, does it feel like you're at the Super Bowl? It's incredible, but it is a TV first occasion.
The concert is.
Yeah.
The concert is. The game itself, I don't think so. Like, yes, of course, it's better to have a TV around because like there's a lot of TV goodies that you get, like
The analysis.
the first down line, the analysis, the stats and all that. But the game itself is fun enough. Like I've been to a few Formula One races, and that's a TV event. Like I don't understand how it gets so full because for me it's boring. You just see a car.
Right, I think Ryder Cup golf is another one, Martin. Right, it's like Ryder Cup golf when they're going from hole to hole to hole to hole to hole. Obviously, it's awesome when you're there, but it's like a made-for-TV sport, isn't it?
Exactly. So there are sports that cover like extremely long distances, so you cannot watch it all at the same time. Whereas an American football match, yeah, well, you're there, you're watching it, and it's spectacular enough. So I don't think so. The concert, on the other hand, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and we're going to get into Kendrick in a minute, but I think just on that as well, I think it is also the occasion of the day, how you spend the whole day, the tailgate. I think of cricket, right? People say the same thing about Test cricket. How can you go to a Test match? Watch a Test match take place. I've been to many Test matches. I've enjoyed them. It's the day, right? You can dip out, you can pop out, you can go get a beer, you can go get some food, you can go talk to some people. The match is still going on. It's the whole occasion, isn't it? And I think that they do a great job of that in the US. There's a great culture around it. You've been to a lot of the UK games as well, NFL UK games, James. Do you think we've nailed that yet over here when the NFL come to town?
I mean, the results would say that we have, and the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is built for that, right?
Yeah.
And I did the stadium tour there, and to sort of just to see that the NFL size dressing room, even the difference between and that we have for Premier League games was crazy. But look, they continue to sell out. They continue to charge high ticket prices. There's tons and tons of demand. The teams, I don't know if they want to come, but they do come. But also I think it's our culture is a little different, isn't it? Because our soccer doesn't have tailgate culture, right? It's places like Spurs are trying to change it, where they're trying to get you in 3-4 hours ahead and sort of experience that. But stereotypically in our football, it's been right, stay in the local pubs till the last possible minute, go sprint in, right, go into the game. So it's a different thing. And also we'll have less grounds that some of them are. The classic American stadium is maybe not New Orleans, but it's out on the retail park, isn't it, Martin? It's out, so you can park all the way around it off the freeway, so you can arrive at 7:00 in the morning for the West Coast games that start early, and that's all been part of it. For us, it's smaller country, more public transport, more running around, sculling cans of Stella on the train, and all that type of stuff. So it's I'm not sure it'll completely move to that, But I think the NFL have done an amazing job of trying to define it, get people down there early and just try to soak it up, be part of the experience, see American stuff. And I think our English football teams would like to do that, but we have logistics challenges and stuff like that. And again, they're not having to pay police forces and security people for 8 games a year. That could be 30 games a year. So logistics, I think, come into it.
Yeah, I think in that sense, Wembley is better, in a better situation than Tottenham. I mean, Tottenham is a much better stadium, but Wembley, it's outside of town. It has an entrance area where you can like actually set up some stalls. In Tottenham, just arrive, you're in the middle of the city, and just arrive, you just bump into the stadium. So yeah, it's hard. Like for us, for example, now it's going to be a challenge in the Bernabeu in Madrid, because it's like Tottenham. Like it's
similar.
Right in the middle. There's nothing. Like literally, we don't have an area to set up, like, you know, merchandise stalls or like fun and games stalls and things like this. So we're thinking of different alternatives to actually like set up a fan zone. So yeah, but I think on the other hand, we have a different sports culture. Americans are like that. They're used to that. For example, I'm a Jets fan, unfortunately. And then next to the stadium, there's a huge shopping mall. So after the game, you go to the shopping mall and stay there and buy stuff. And it's something that we usually don't think of. The match is over, we leave. When we go home, we suffer our miseries. If you're like me, a sports and Jets fan. Yeah, but in general, like you don't think of like, now I'm gonna go shopping, but Americans do. So yeah, they have this culture, and I don't think that we could replicate it here in Europe.
I think we are seeing like trends towards people happy to invest a lot of money into their day. You know, a younger NFL fan perhaps might be less precious about what the sporting occasion means. Or for NFL fans, I think in the UK, such a novelty when the NFL are in town, even though there's, 5-6 games every year now, that they're happy to make a whole day out of it. So I actually think if there was, there's almost no limit to what can be put on for them. I think you're going to see a great return. But as you say, Martin, it's true. If you look at football culture in the UK, for example, it's, as James said as well, it's get in, get out, go watch the game, have a drink in your local and spend as little time in the stadium as possible, right?
Also the traveling fan culture, right? If you follow your team, you'll follow your team up and down the country and Europe and all sorts of stuff like this. America's a much, much larger country. And you get the plants. So if you see the Dallas Cowboys are playing in San Diego, it's all Dallas Cowboys fans. So again, I think probably the biggest key difference is literally the size of the countries. I would probably say, which dictates so much of the behavior.
No, and here in Spain, you have 10 p.m. kickoff times.
Yeah.
So after the game, you want to go back home, even if Spain is
you don't go for dinner, right?
Yeah. They do. But like, this is a late night culture, but not so much. Like there's no shopping malls open at midnight. So yeah.
No, it's going to be. It's interesting to see how these markets adapt, and we'll talk more about the international games in a bit. I wanted to move on to the content. Having a looked at some of the output on Fox and some of the NFL's output, did you guys have a chance to look at the video with Brad Pitt? It felt like there was a lot of heavy, emotive, thematic content around healing and bringing people together for this game that they love. Martin, did you think that was the right sort of tone for that sort of content? Did you guys engage with that sort of content on Mundo or not?
I mean, we do. We published it, but it's not our main priority. The Super Bowl commercial usually doesn't do that well for us. They try to integrate Latino people. They always have some Mexican around here and there. We haven't managed to get a Spaniard. We're trying. Let's see. But we don't have a big enough figure. But yeah, the NFL tries. I mean, judging by the way the US is going, they're not succeeding so much, but yeah, they try to make it multicultural, to make it diverse, to make it like and everyone welcome. Also because, and let's be real about this, prototypical football fan in the States comes from the mainly white areas, like rural, the Midwest. Yeah. Of course, the black community is they're huge fans as well. But until lately, there were more fans of the NBA. It's been changing, but yeah, the archetypical fan is this like more conservative one.
Yeah,
So
Texas, Florida, the SEC network schools, absolutely.
just on that, Martin. I mean, we worked together on utilizing Chicharito to grow the fan base of West Ham in Spanish speaking countries, right? In Mexico, and it worked really well. And that was something Martin and I worked on together about 7 years ago. But has the NFL had or needed its Chicharito equivalent?
I mean, not in Mexico, because in Mexico, American football is big. It's always been big. There's an important local culture of football. There's also like a college system like it is in the States. Of course, not as big, not as powerful. And football, like our football, soccer, is way bigger. But American football is probably the second biggest sport, or third if you count boxing. But yeah, it's very big. So it hasn't needed it. It would be great, to be honest, for Mexico. Like, unfortunately, Mark Sanchez didn't work out that well, because that was the, like, you get a...
He's still a commentator, still got profile.
Yeah, but it's not the same. Like, you had a good-looking quarterback, and if he'd been very good, that'd been huge. He wasn't. In Spain, we definitely need something like this. Like, the Formula One was a very, very niche sport until Fernando Alonso came. And when he came, it completely changed, and it became a cultural phenomenon. In Mexico, the same with Checo.
And he was idolized, wasn't he? He was idolized.
He still is. Both Checo and Alonso are idolized, to the point that Sainz is not as big because he came second. You know, he wasn't the first. Tennis was the same. When Nadal came out, it was like, it became huge in Spain, and now with Alcaraz, it's still going there. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone like this in Spain. There was this offensive lineman, Alejandro Villanueva, for the Steelers, but he doesn't like to appear in camera.
No, and I think there used to be some kickers, didn't they, from Latin American markets, like Martin Gramatica and Bill Gramatica. But again, kickers and offensive linemen, they're not going to be what kids put posters on their wall of, and we can't change that. That's just not belittling the job they do, but they're never going to get the headlines.
Exactly. We need quarterbacks or wide receivers or Barkley.
And what's the pipeline looking like in terms of getting a star Mexican quarterback into a team?
Bad.
Right.
I mean, there are a couple of prospects that are Mexican American that could become like reserves, but no big stars.
Okay. I wanted to move on to looking at some of the pre-game show. I don't know if you caught it, James. Did you see the Lady Gaga, Tom Brady piece? They had the first responders there. They had, they were paying tribute to the victims of the terror attack at the start of the year.
Yep.
It felt very powerful. It felt very emotive. The Americans do this stuff really well, don't they?
Yeah, and I think, look, whereas causes, messages, propaganda has in years been divisive, it felt like the opportunity around what happened in New Orleans recently clearly felt like a non-divisive moment, right? Becoming unified over such a horrendous incident that happened so recently. So again, important for them to do that, and again, they do it well because they understand the importance, they understand the platform, and they also understand the budgets, right? So bringing in these kind of big guns to help hammer on that message is something that they have done historically and lent into for many years.
Yeah. NFL are very comfortable in aligning very closely with the flag, patriotism, armed for the military. You always see the military represented in a way that, again, we in the UK would never really do so much with football. I mean, we have Remembrance, and we do Remembrance Day and the poppies and everything pretty well, but we tend to keep them quite separate. Do you think that needs to be dialed down when they go international, for example, Martin?
Well, it actually is. Like, I remember I went to Frankfurt a year ago and to Tottenham 2 years ago, and it's not the same at all. At Tottenham, we have these like jet fighters coming right past the stadium. That's pretty cool. But there was no like military like this all these like paraphernalia that you get in American games. And in Frankfurt, nothing at all. Not at all. Especially in Germany, that there's like even more like distinct divide, and I don't think in Spain it's going to happen. I think it's very characteristic of the American culture. They even have this Veterans Day, where all the teams like dress in like military kind of gear and stuff like that. I don't think that's going to translate here at all.
James, how do you find that all as a UK guy? As I said, you've been following the NFL for years. Are you fully on board with all things Star Spangled Banner, or do you just take it for what it is?
Well, it was always part of the package, right? For someone
Yeah.
that grew up in the United Kingdom in the, the 70s going into the 80s and seeing the entry of American football in the mid 80s, there was such a chasm between the two cultures, right? And America, and that's closed a lot, right? I think. But again, the razzmatazz, the over the top, the take your hat off for the flag, all this type of stuff was just part of the package and also part of the attraction, right? Because back then we were living in grey Thatcherite Britain where it didn't really feel that exciting. But again, part of the razzmatazz, and I was a kid then with I love Dallas, I love rap music, I love the NFL. It was just all part of a different, exciting world that is over the top and bombastic and four-dimensional and all these things. And I've always considered it part of the package. And again, I think it draws the numbers, it draws that you recited earlier, because it becomes part of a patriotic exercise to the world, right? We embrace all of that and turn it into it, which then in theory should unite people around those particular. It's like a global product that we're sending to the world to say people how important we are, how big we are, how unified we are, how powerful we are, right? It seems to be all part of the message.
Yeah, absolutely. There was always that sense of kind of Americana and aspirationalism, particularly in the 1980s, as you say, James. Let's talk about the ads. James, you're a digital agency man, so you do a lot of digital marketing. You work with some really cool brands, but this was, $8 million per 30-second slot. Super Bowl ad slots are crazy, and it's not just about obviously the airtime, it's everything they do on digital too. But this feels like TV advertising is alive and kicking, right?
I mean, it always seems to be. They always seem to sell out, right? And also what they tend to do is they tend to mold around where the current spend and attention is. I remember a couple of years ago when it was the peak of the crypto stuff, right? When you had Coinbase with their strange QR code ad and all that type of stuff. So it really does become that platform, because think about online now. It's, yes, you can get audience, but it's very difficult to get a non-fragmented audience, isn't it? We jump on Meta, we jump on TikTok, we go, we want to target these people. But with the Super Bowl, you have the ability to, in theory, all demographics are sitting in front of the same screen. So you have that, right, I've got your attention, one spot, here we go, right? Which is, we don't have that. We don't have that with our TV anymore. We used to buy TV ads in the final of the X Factor. We don't have it. But then also what we find is the cost is in the content. So now it's less of the premiere. And again, people know what to expect, but it's brands investing in the content and now getting it on social channels and utilizing social channels wherever they can, because they understand there's the lead up, there's the after. So again, I found it interesting and I saw the mayonnaise advert for When Harry Met Sally, which, interesting enough, I saw on the UK feed. Please someone correct me in the comments, but I've never seen an American ad debut in the UK feed. Normally it's late night Sky ads for like FX and gambling and whoever advertises late night and Sky. I saw the Harry Met Sally ad and I was like, this is amazing. Surely for a little bit more investment, brands like, this is Hellman's mayonnaise, they're everywhere, do a little bit more of this. So I had a look on YouTube to have a look at the ad of When Harry Met Sally. It has 1 million views on YouTube. It has 0 comments. So draw your own conclusion to that.
Well, that speaks 1,000 words, right? If not 1,000 comments. But Martin, when you're in one of the frustrations of being at the Super Bowl, well, not that there's a lot of frustrations, you're at the Super Bowl, it's unbelievable, but you don't get to watch the ads, do you, when you're there? You don't get that experience. Did you get a sense of which ads were popping off, though? A lot of them, obviously posted during the week. Did you have an idea of kind of what people were talking about?
Not at all. I heard that this year's ads were disappointing, but that's all I got. I don't even know if that's true or not.
And that's all relative, right? Like, what does that even mean? I I've listed down 10 ads that I thought were brilliant, and maybe that's just because I just love great advertising and great marketing. But what is someone saying when they say to you that the ads were disappointing? Not enough celebrities, or
They were not as memorable as other ads in their opinion. I don't know. That's the only thing I read. But the thing is, when you're there, you
yeah,
don't have, especially working. If you're there as a fan, you could be watching TV, But
yeah,
if you when you're there working, you don't have time to watch TV at all.
of course.
So yeah, I didn't watch. Like sometimes, like other years, I've watched them just because people recommend them to me, but it didn't happen this time. So I have no clue what happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they're all on YouTube and social media, Martin. So stop being so analog. Yeah, you can have a look at them. It's all right.
It's,
Um,
it's,
What was your favourite one? Your personal choice. Your favourite one, Amar. What was your favourite one?
I just love what Nike are doing at the moment. I think they've gone back to their roots. Loved "You Can't Win, So Win," which was the women's sports ad which they put out, TVC which they put out, which was brilliant. It felt classic Nike, leaning into the tension, the hero's journey, which they're all about. And then they did these two really cool planned reactive pieces. I love planned reactive content. So they had Jalen Hurts kind of talking about how he sort of silenced the haters. Really nice spot. And then they did the Eagles Kermit the Frog piece. It's not easy being green. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that was a lot of fun. What about you, James?
Just on that point on the Nike, did I read this
Yeah.
correctly, Amar? They hadn't done a Super Bowl ad for 25 years or something like that. I think I did read that.
This was
You're right.
yes, exactly. Yeah.
It was interesting. They went back to their original roots, where it's like Jalen Hurts is the classic underdog story, isn't it? And that's a lot of been the Nike overcome obstacles type stuff. From a personal preference, probably too. I did like the Pringles with the mustaches. I just thought it was creative and entertaining and amazing. And will it make me buy more Pringles? Probably. And I thought Andy Reid with the tash, probably one of America's famous tashes. That was really great. And also I thought the Bud Light one was interesting. It feels like next Super Bowl halftime they'll go more in the country music lane, just because that's where culture's going and it's so massive, and it may be a bit of a change. So Post Malone is the perfect segue artist to that. So maybe bringing him into the Bud Light, going back to their roots. The Mannings are on everywhere, and they score really, really well. So I'd say Bud Light and Pringles are probably my two favorite. And I'm not a Bud Light drinker, but that's not really going to change. Again, a British thing, so we don't really drink that here. But yeah, two enjoyable ads, I thought.
Yeah. Well, look, as an ex Bud guy, I think Bud Light, has that real position in NFL in the same way. So Budweiser is usually activated around the Clydesdales and like all the classic American iconography, whereas Bud Light, which over the last 10 years has been the bigger product in the US, has been more closely aligned with guy on the porch kind of drink, suburban Americana, really targeting the viewing occasion of having a Bud Light, watching the game in a way that Budweiser hasn't really been marketed in that way. So it's really interesting that they've lent into that. Post Malone's got a really great relationship with Bud Light. He's worked with them for a few years now, so he's kind of one of the main muses for Bud Light. So yeah, really interesting to see that ad with him and Peyton Manning kind of just celebrating kind of dad culture and dad core as well, which also seems to be a thing at the moment too. Martin, I wanted to ask you about the Messi and Apple TV spot. A really nice little teaser. When the football ends, the football begins, as in actual football, soccer. What's the buzz like in the US for the new MLS season? Anyone talking about it at the moment? It starts pretty soon, right?
Nobody really cares, to be absolutely honest. Like what I know is that Apple TV has reduced their prices by a lot because their bet on MLS hasn't worked. Yeah, with Messi, the subscribers grew for that season particularly because of the novelty, but now it came back to normal. They're slashing budgets as well. Before they were flying commentators to the matches, now they're not doing it anymore. They changed their studio from Manhattan to Connecticut. So yeah, not so much. The thing is, I mean, this is a subject of a different podcast, but the thing with the MLS, the problem with the MLS is that Americans are used to be the best in the world and to watch the best sports in the world, and the MLS is very far from that. So they prefer to watch the Premier and the Champions League. That's the reality of it. And the Liga MX, I mean, all the Mexican fans are watching the Liga MX. They haven't been like, except for LAFC and Galaxy, they haven't been able to like capture those Mexican fans who are still rooting for America, Chivas, and all those other teams.
It feels like they have the opportunity with the next World Cup to, I mean, that's a major opportunity. And I'm sure they're going to absolutely lean into it in the best way possible. But it feels like they really need to get aligned around what their strategies around that for clear and obvious reasons. But that's going to be absolutely huge. And, you know, American and home teams hosting World Cups generally do quite well, don't they? So they'll probably do better than they have done in recent World Cups as well.
Yeah, they have a decent team, not a great team, but a decent team. Yeah, they could make the quarterfinals depending on the of the draw. Yeah, let's see how the people align themselves behind the team. Also, there's like this political stuff now because Pulisic is very clearly pro-Trump and other players are not, and mostly of the fans of the soccer community in the States are Democrats. So yeah, there's some like random stuff going on around this soccer in the States now.
There is the World Cup, obviously, next year. And before that, there's the Club World Cup this summer as well. Is there any excitement around that, Martin? Because as you say, Americans want to watch the best. And in theory, that is going to bring some of the best teams over.
No, they also have slashed the price, the ticket prices, because, there's not enough interest. I mean, I guess that one's going to get more hype as the time comes closer. Because, I mean, there's going to be Messi, there's going to be Cristiano, there's going to be Mbappe, there's going to be Real Madrid, Barcelona. Well, Barcelona no, because they didn't qualify, but Liverpool, Man City, all these teams. I think it's going to get better. And also, like, European team friendlies tend to do very well in the States. All these, like, tours usually fill up the stadium. So I think it's going to be fine. But right now, 1 year to go, no, 6 months ago, not at all.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is, well, there are some big teams who are not there, right? So Liverpool are not there, Barcelona are not there. But then you do have some big teams like Real Madrid, which will be there. Manchester City, Chelsea, I think, are there. Bayern Munich. And then you've got the teams that are obviously big in, like Al Ahly in Egypt, for example, I think are playing. Auckland City, you know, which I think are going to be more of a sort of curiosity, right, to some of the soccer fans in the US.
Yeah, well, you got the Mexican teams where they're gonna fill up the stadiums for sure.
Yeah.
River Plate, like I know I have Argentinian friends who have bought tickets for the River Plate and Boca Juniors games. That they're gonna go there. Like it's an excuse. Like the Club World Cup is an excuse to watch the matches, but mostly to go to the States, to Miami and LA and all these places.
Yeah. So the US Latino areas like the West Coast, Miami, there will be excitement, obviously, but in terms of whether it will pierce the consciousness of Middle America, you're thinking that's going to be an uphill battle.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that's going to be interesting to see. Before we move on to Kendrick, really want to talk about Kendrick with you guys. We do need to talk about another rapper, unfortunately, and that's Kanye West. Or whatever he calls himself these days, Yeezy, I'm not even sure. The advert that ran on some of Fox's channels, I mean, then driving people to a website with a swastika emblem on it. I mean, this is a pretty abhorrent episode in the history of marketing, right, James?
I mean, it feels like it. And I think I saw Shopify being applauded on some sort of social channel that they took it down within 13 hours. And I'm like, if you zoom out, you just have to ask yourself, Amar, like, how can this happen, right? You could create an image of, that there's Kanye. He's kind of calling up a media rep, and then he's got all sorts of products on his site. And then someone says, "Oh, do you want to watch the game? Do you want some nachos?" He's like, "Oh no, I'm hacking the back of my Shopify site and putting all this on." It defies belief, right? It absolutely defies belief. Like, I understand. He tries to celebrate the lo-fi ad was shot on a smartphone. Like, I understand that.
Right? But he was also, before people even know what's on the website, he's been on social media calling himself a Nazi, right?
He's got form. Let's just agree on that. So yeah, it defies comprehension how that can happen, in my opinion. So I'll just leave it there, because there is a reason these things happen, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, it defies comprehension.
Martin? one to forget, one to put behind us, or should action be taken?
I mean, what can you do? We're living in Trump's America, no? I mean, nothing will happen. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. That one I heard about, like that was the only one I heard about. Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't even know about it, Martin, but apparently it was only on some local affiliates or whatever. So not everybody, clutching at straws here, but certain locations had it and not everybody. So it was kind of, look, when I found out, I was absolutely flabbergasted. But then to your point, Martin, not flabbergasted at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very crazy, but the guy is completely nuts. That's the thing. He is out of it. So yeah, people, I think, take him more as a curiosity than with any seriousness.
Yeah,
you know Media MR, right? If we wanted to get an ad on daytime TV on some sort of obscure channel on Sky selling some sort of ineffectual pet food brand, the multiple hurdles and clearing we'd have to go through to do that. You know that, right? So it's not just a upload it, plug and play type job and we didn't see it. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
No, absolutely. And I think there has to be checks and balances at every level, from a regulatory point of view, from a local broadcast point of view, from a comms perspective for an organization like Fox, which should know better. And we all know where their politics lie. That being said, some things are open to debate, some things are open to subjective opinion. A swastika on a t-shirt after a guy's been ranting on X for days about how he supports Adolf Hitler, there really shouldn't be any room for debate on that, right? That is just hate mongering. So yeah, it was a really bad moment, a really bad look for everyone involved, and I think we should just move on from it, right? Let's move on to someone more commendable in my eyes, but I'd love to know what you guys thought, because I've heard so many opinions about Kendrick Lamar's halftime concert. I know, James, I probably can have a guess where your head is at, because you're a hip hop lover like me, I think. But Martin, what was the response like in the stadium?
I mean, what do I think? I thought it was absolutely terrible. I thought it was bad. The worst I've seen in like a Super Bowl halftime concert. Why? Well, I'm not a hip hop fan to start with. I like though the one that they did in LA, with all the old hip hoppers.
Dr. Dre, Snoop.
Yeah, Eminem, Snoop. Yeah, this one, the thing is, the music was the same, like all the same. Yeah, there were no ups and downs. Then the show itself looked low budget. Like you didn't have like platforms going up and down like Rihanna, or all that light show that Jennifer Lopez and Shakira had. Or I thought it was not even the best halftime show of the season, because Beyonce's on Netflix was better. And then the sound was not very good in stadium. From what I've heard, it wasn't very good on TV either. So I felt they didn't want to spend money because, as you both for sure know, they don't get paid. They pay to actually perform at halftime. So I think Kendrick didn't want to invest. And then there was all these like feuds he has with other artists and like symbols that, I mean, with all due respect, most of the people don't understand. Like, like people, friends of mine who love Kendrick Lamar say like, yeah, now he said this about Drake, or yeah, Samuel L. Jackson was dressed as this character of a Spike Lee movie. Yeah, but nobody watched that movie, just you guys. So yeah, it was a hard one to swallow. I understand people who liked it, but for us who weren't on the it was a pretty strange
what was the reception like in the stadium? Because we've seen videos are out there of people sort of scrolling on their phones, and I'm not being funny. It could be the Beatles reforming and people will still be sat there scrolling on their phones. So maybe that's not the point. But what was the reception like in the stadium and around you? People into it?
My sensation was that they got bored halfway and they started to do different things, because like usually you see these flashes, like the lights on the camera on when people are filming. There were way fewer than the previous ones. So
Yeah.
that was my impression.
Yeah. How about you, James? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I felt it was a perplexing decision to hire him as an artist to do it. And it was going to, for the obvious and logical reasons that Martin's put out. It's like when you have a product, you market it to your customers. your customers, in air quotes, are not Kendrick Lamar fans, stereotypically. Not to say that hundreds of millions of people don't listen to Kendrick Lamar, but your stereotypical personaed NFL fan. We talked about it, Bud Light drinking, sat on the porch, right? Not a Kendrick Lamar fan, right? So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is that whereas he is incredibly popular, he's only really had a, let's call it a radio banger, crossover hit, whatever you would say, in the past 12 months, right? So, and that particular crossover hit is, in air quotes, problematic because of what it suggests and what it covers and what it represents. So if you look at, if you were drawing it up on the whiteboard, you in theory are putting more red X's than green ticks, in theory, right? Now, the other challenge is, look, as an art piece, and lots of Kendrick stuff is very arty and well executed and stuff, it's great, you know, so enjoyed it. Where I was, it was well received. The bigger Kendrick Lamar hits that were played were more received, but he played a new track, but also his music, it's not, you know, it isn't as euphoric and club banger generated as you want to talk about that Dr. Dre Snoop Dogg performance, which is like best hits of hip hop karaoke over the past 20 years. So it was perplexing. It felt like the people that really liked Kendrick really liked it. It had some patriotic elements, which was sort of missed on me. I didn't realize that was an American flag until I saw it back, and I was like, all right, okay. So I kind of had to watch it again. But in the moment, people seemed to like it. Now, was the crowd reaction anything like the crowd reaction I saw when Katy Perry did Firework about 10 years ago at a different Super Bowl party? Probably not. But yeah, an interesting one. It feels like, yeah, I would say just an interesting decision, right, from the NFL, and that's probably the best way to surmise it.
Yeah. For me, I think they've already overdone the hip hop thing. Like, you had the old rappers, you have Usher, you had now Kendrick Lamar. Like, enough. You know, like I'm sure that if they had Dua Lipa next Super Bowl, that would be huge. They won't, because they cannot hire. Like, the thing with Super Bowl halftime shows is that they need to be artists that are not at their top, because they would not want not to be paid. They want to, like, resurrect their careers, which is what Usher did last Super Bowl, or same Shakira and Jennifer Lopez. Like, Shakira 2006 probably wouldn't have wanted to do that, or Jennifer Lopez when Jenny on the Block was like trending, you know. But this one, like, these versions of them, yeah, probably they did. So this time they will need to find someone whose appeal is bigger, I think, but someone who's not as big, like not a huge artist. I mean, because if they paid, Taylor Swift would have been there already, you know, because who else, no? Who's a biggest celebrity associated with football now, with American football now? But as they don't pay, you need to get the balance right.
They don't pay, but it's the biggest ad in the world. I mean, Usher launched his tour on the back of it. Tickets for Kendrick and SZA went live, global tour, the day after, and it's been everywhere this week. I've been listening to you guys holding.
If you're Taylor Swift, you don't need it.
No, exactly, and that's probably part of why that's not happened, right? And it's almost too obvious a consummation of a relationship, right, between the NFL and Taylor Swift right now. But here's my take on it, okay? And I think I totally understand your perspectives. With respect, it's my podcast, you're both wrong. But no, I'll carry on. I'm kidding. I thought it was incredible. I loved it. I had to watch it. So first of all, okay, it all depends on your expectations of what a halftime show for Super Bowl should be, right? So Martin, you've obviously got some expectations, having been to 6 of them. And number one, you book Kendrick Lamar. You're not booking him because he's going to create a really nice visual spectacle with loads of dancing. It's not Katy Perry and fireworks and Left Shark and Right Shark and stuff like that, right? You're not booking him as a pop artist. You know what you're getting, okay? Why was Kendrick Lamar chosen? Obviously, Jay-Z's been curating the artists for the last 4 or 5 years, right? Rock Nation have been doing that. That's why there's been a lot of hip hop, okay? We live in a time of, you know, Prince has sadly gone, Michael Jackson has gone, Madonna is barely there, right? So there's no big global icons. Taylor Swift's probably the closest thing, right? Kendrick Lamar had the biggest hit last year, right? By far, okay? The biggest hit. It was an anthem in the US. And look, I had to watch it 2 or 3 times to understand everything he was doing. I thought it was very artful. It was political, but in a subtle way. In a time where things are going pretty crazy at the moment politically, and I felt like it was a balm for a lot of people. I just thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a brilliant piece of art. I think it should be analyzed for years to come. I loved it. Personally, I loved it. And for me, as a hip hop fan, and you'll know this, James, particularly, Chuck D once said, hip hop is the black CNN, right? That is our platform to talk about what's happening in our lives and what our perspectives is. And that was going back to the essence of what hip hop was. Yes, Dre and Snoop singing your favorite bangers from the 90s was great. And of course, Kendrick was there and part of that, right? Let's not forget. But this was special for me. I loved it. And I would put it number one, but I'm such a big Prince fan. Prince singing Purple Rain in the Rain will never be defeated for me. But I absolutely loved it.
Look, and again, I don't want to correct you on your own podcast, but I'm going to.
I'll mute your mic.
Yeah. It was actually the 14th most popular streamed song in 2024. So you were close, top 20, but not number one. But look,
1 to 13 was Taylor Swift songs or something that nobody actually wants to talk about, right?
But it's like, I don't know, man. Like, the Super Bowl is a very big event that appeals to all kind of people, and it's like playing some Mexican banda song. There is a whole, like, a big language of Mexican banda, and it's like very, like, in Mexico everybody loves that, or like an Indian, like the biggest Indian artist. That will be probably huge for Indian fans, but for the rest of us, we would be like,
yeah, but Martin, hip hop has been popular in Middle America since NWA. You know what I mean? Like,
but the problem
it's
is,
not
like,
niche music anymore, right? It's as mainstream as anything.
But it's kind of niche. Like, in Mexico, nobody knows Kendrick Lamar, and nobody cares about Kendrick Lamar. In Latin America, in general, nobody really.
Yeah, but they're listening to Bad Bunny, who probably bases all of his inspiration on people like Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, but it's like we've been playing El General because it's an inspiration on reggaeton. Like,
yeah,
I'd argue that Bad Bunny is actually more popular now than Kendrick Lamar around the world.
Well, I've got the stats in front of me. No, he wasn't in 2024. But anyway, but look, I think to your point, Amar, it's like, look, for that performance being at the Grammys, I mean, people care about the Grammys, different environment, like, absolutely. Again, I would say he does do arty spectacles, right? And he's managed to fit 100 people inside a car as well, which was amazing. But I think also he is incredibly popular. However, Not Like Us was the breakthrough single for him because it was the DJ Mustard beat and it was the accessible thing and the beef stuff. His music prior to then was incredible, but very, very intricate, very, very detailed, very, very skilled, like much more music fan adjacent. The song he did with SZA on Black Panther is massive, but you don't hear it pumped out on, commercial radio. So I don't think we're saying massively different things. And then also the other thing is the Crip Walk association with Serena Williams. That's not a good association. If my parents, if my kids are asking me, explain to me what Crip walking is and why we think that's appropriate to be on that.
But James, that's a reference to Serena crip walking at Wimbledon, and it's part of the culture of which they grew up in. And Snoop did the same thing, guys, a few years ago.
That's what I was talking about. Like, nobody understood that because nobody's into that thing. Like, it's like all references to. It's a bit like the opening ceremony thing that they did in Paris. There were so many references that went lost because they were all for French people. I mean, I lived in France, so I understood them, and it was great for me. I loved it. But for many people, they were like, well, yeah, I don't get it.
And what about the Samuel L. Jackson inclusion, Amar? What did you think of that element?
Well, it completely validated the debate that people are having, which is he was representing a certain section of America. He was representing Uncle Sam, America, saying, Kendrick, we want you to play these kind of songs and we don't want you to do that, and that's too black and that's too ghetto. And what ends up happening is everyone has turned around and actually made the same argument that, it was too hard to understand and it wasn't mainstream enough and it wasn't poppy enough and stuff. That's exactly what he did. So I thought it was very, very clever. But I understand your opinions, guys, and I know that it's about what your expectations are.
In a vacuum, sitting there watching it live for the 13 minutes, I enjoyed it. Like in that vacuum, sat in there watching it for 13 minutes, I enjoyed it and agreed
Well,
with
how did it go down in Box Park, Croydon? Is that where you were?
really well, really well.
Yeah,
Like, you know,
yeah,
people, but the hits, right? The hits amongst the 7 songs that he played, like the hits went down really well. Like, you know, and that's a crowd that sort of over indexes more on your sort of like, you know, slight beer belly, slightly too small American football jersey protruding type crowd. And it's not all like that, but again, it's sort of slightly different to a more of a cooler crowd. So yeah, well received. But that's London, right? That's in a, and Box Park is a cool place with a cool brand that attracts, you know, cooler people than some other places.
Than us. Martin, what would be your expectations then for next year then? Sort of an artist more, you mentioned Dua Lipa.
I mean, I think it's hard also because she's at the top of her game now, so it's difficult. I mean, it's San Francisco. People are dreaming about Metallica. I don't think it will happen. Like that's something that could have been cool 20 years ago, but now it doesn't make much sense. They might be a reference because, well, they're like big. I think reggaeton will be around. I think it's due, and I think someone like this, like Dua Lipa, or this kind of Ariana Grande, this kind of like artist, you know, I think they're gonna get away from hip hop. In the VIP concert before the game, there was Post Malone, so that's another interesting name to think about.
He seems like the perfect choice to me. Maybe a Morgan Wallen headline with a Post Malone feature. Again, you're doing everything you did with Kendrick. You're ticking all the boxes. You've got the big, massive, recognizable radio hits that everyone can sing along and get their lighter out if they're allowed lighters out anymore. So I can see it going more that way. Have you been to a Super Bowl in San Francisco, Martin?
No, not yet.
I was there for once for Super Bowl week. Didn't stick around for the game, unfortunately. Had to go around. And again, the challenge with San Francisco is the stadium's now like an hour and a half drive of the city. So there was some stuff. They were trying to get some stuff down there. But again, it's, you know, I don't think there are that many people trying to hang out in downtown San Francisco at the moment, obviously, either. So yeah, it's been an interesting choice.
Yeah, it's an incredible stadium, right? The Levi's Stadium.
It's very nice. It's very nice. It's not at the level of the SoFi in LA, but it's pretty good.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Great discussion and debate. I enjoyed that. Nice to hear some different opinions and perspectives. I think just final thoughts, guys. It's been a really good discussion. Reflecting on this week and your week in New Orleans, Martin, and everything we've seen from the NFL. First of all, Martin, does this kind of reaffirm to you the kind of the cultural dominance, the growth, the relevance of the NFL in the US, first of all, and then as a global thing as well?
Absolutely. I mean, we had a game between, the Chiefs, who are big now, but the Eagles are not, like around the world. And they're big in Philadelphia, but they're not like a nationally followed team like the Cowboys.
But success changes that, though, Martin. Certainly globally, yeah.
Of course. But right now they're not. Like if they start winning, yeah, for sure. Like what happened with Mahomes and the Chiefs, but we had that. Like it was not like last year. Last year, Chiefs and the Niners was, for us, it was a dream
matchup. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. This time, well, and still like they smashed up all the records in like just to give you some figures that we have internally. In Mexico, they got 150,000 new followers for TikTok in NFL Mexico, which is crazy. Us in Spain, we had 8,000 new followers in Super Bowl week for Instagram, and it's Spain, you know, nobody cares about the NFL here, but still we managed to attract, like our account has now like 22 or 23,000 followers, and 30% of it came during the Super Bowl week, which is pretty crazy, you know. And then, well, that talks to you about how important it's become that we didn't have a Chiefs Niners game or even Packers, like not a big franchise around the world, you know, Cowboys for sure. If we had a Chiefs Cowboys game, like I can't imagine, or something like this, and still it was huge. It was that, like in terms of followers and like attention and rating and all that, it was like the biggest in history. So yeah, I guess it does.
James, who remember it used to be the Niners and the Dolphins who were the big teams in the UK back in the sort of 80s and 90s. Is it still like that?
I mean, they've still got a huge following, right? Those original. So, for those who don't know, back in the 80s, they produced merchandise for like 6 teams, just didn't produce it for the rest, right? So, in a sense, that was the birth of the mega power franchises, which would be the Bears, the Dolphins, the Niners, the Redskins, sorry, now the Commanders, the Giants, and the Raiders, and the Cowboys, and that was it, right? So, do they have strong followings? Of course. But those franchises that I've all mentioned, they've probably got one thing in common. They haven't won much recently, right, in the last 20 years. And what we've seen is the rise of the dominance of, the Patriots and now the Chiefs. And I think, look, it's a little bit like Manchester City in our football, right? It will, who notoriously haven't had many fans at all, success will breed that. And again, for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's 3 Super Bowl appearances in 7 years, including 2 wins. They also have this celebrity fan base, which gets more annoying by the time, but again, has power, right? They're marketable. They're on the East Coast. Jalen Hurts is probably now firmly in that top 5 of quarterbacks, incredibly marketable. Saquon Barkley, incredibly marketable. Can you imagine if he was playing for your team that you supported? I mean, like, you turn up to watch games and it's an absolute joy, isn't it? So you have all that. So I think, look, shout to the Philadelphia Eagles. They've done incredibly well to have that sustained success. Draft really well. Lots of people will want to go there. And again, I think they're going to be around. And again, they've got fans here, but yeah, we'll see how they grow. But shout to them. Well deserved winners.
Guys, we're deep in the fourth quarter now, so yeah. I'm going to bring us home. I've got final question for you both. How long before we see a Super Bowl in Europe, in your opinion? James, do we see one in our lifetime?
I think the question probably is, do we see Super Bowl first or franchise first? I would say franchise first. And I would say within 15 years.
I actually agree. I don't think there's going to be a Super Bowl abroad at all.
But once the franchise comes here, I think there has to be.
It's possible. But right now, like, even Florentino Perez has pushed hard to have a Super Bowl in Madrid, but no, it's not happening. Like, it's too much for an American event to take it abroad. I would love London to have a Super Bowl because I think it's a much better city than any of the American cities that usually host a Super Bowl for a sporting event. Everything is like so close together, and like you could actually have an ambience and an atmosphere which is harder in other American cities. But I don't see it happening.
London would be a magnet for Europe as well, as it is for the NFL UK games, in that so many fans come over from Germany and Spain and so on. But we've been hearing about this franchise and this possible London franchise, in a meaningful way, probably for 15, 16 years. What's going on?
Yeah, it was supposed to be the Jaguars, wasn't it? But they built a brand new stadium, so they're not moving. So yeah, I can't offer you a conspiracy theory. Martin's a lot closer to it than I am, but these guys are ready to go and they're not selling out. Jacksonville was the absolute logical one. But again, in terms of who would it be, or do they, maybe they increase it to 34 teams, right? Maybe they do it that way. And then maybe they launch 2 franchises, one in the UK, one in Europe. Look, you know what it's like. If you're a business and you're growing and you're dominant, you set the rules, don't you? You set the rules, you define the rules. You don't wait for others. You do what you do. So I'd like to believe they have enough data here, right, to kind of, to get there. It's not going to be Roger Goodell adding like another preseason game everywhere. Think about his legacy. He's not going to be the commissioner forever. I think he probably wants it to happen while he's still in the reins. Otherwise, it's just jotted international games around. But I think next 15 years, I think so.
Yeah, logistics are hard. I think that's mostly the issue. Flying.
They are, but for successful businesses, Martin, you just throw money at it, don't you? Money cures so many problems, doesn't it?
I know. But that's why it's going slow. That's why it's been talked about like for already 10, 15 years and it hasn't happened. Yeah, like if you play a West Coast team, you have to fly them over, and that's not an 8-hour flight, but a 14-hour flight, and it's doable, but I understand why it's going slow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's hoping we see something like that happen in our lifetimes, because I have no doubt that, a team in London would absolutely be fully sustainable from a fan point of view, from an audience point of view, from a growth point of view. And if the Americans have the appetite for it and the stomach for it, Unlike UK football fans who can't even envision a competitive Premier League game being played anywhere else in the UK, and that's obviously another podcast and another issue, I think it would be a pretty incredible thing. And in a way, the logical step for, the growth that we're seeing globally. Thank you so much, guys. I really enjoyed our conversation. Lots of great opinions, lots of great insights, as expected. And enjoy the off season. We'll reconnect over the draft or something, yeah? So there you have it. Lively discussion, big debate, particularly over Kendrick. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. I really enjoyed it. A big thank you again to my guests, James and Martin. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please share with your friends and your colleagues if you think they might find this interesting too. And see you next time. Thanks. Bye.